What if I told you that one of the most powerful empires ever to exist on this earth simply ceased to be? Not through fire, not through bloodshed, not through the boots of a conquering army, but through a single quiet letter delivered to embassies around the world. One document. A few strokes of ink on paper. And just like that, 3,000 years of identity were rewritten. No war. No invasion. No chaos in the streets. Just a name that once made kings tremble and civilizations bow, erased from the maps of the world. This is the story of Persia. An empire so ancient, so vast, so terrifyingly powerful that at its peak it held dominion over nearly half of all human beings alive on Earth. An empire that gave the world Cyrus the Great, Darius, and Xerxes. An empire whose borders stretched from the banks of the Nile all the way to the shores of the Indus River. And yet today, if you open any atlas, any globe, any map on your phone, you will not find it. In its place sits a country called Iran. So what truly happened? Was this a betrayal of history? A cold political calculation made behind closed doors? Or was it something far deeper, a desperate attempt by a people to step out from beneath a shadow that had grown too heavy to carry? The truth is more layered, more dangerous, and more fascinating than most people ever realize. Because this is not simply a story about renaming a country. This is a story about a silent war fought over the soul of an entire civilization. And if you want to see what other lost empires we dig into next, stay with Crimson Archive, because we are only just beginning. To truly understand why Persia vanished from the world's vocabulary, you first need to understand what Persia actually was. And for that, we have to travel back. Far back. Back to a time before the name Persia carried any weight at all. Picture the Iranian plateau. A landscape almost brutal in its grandeur, jagged mountain ranges, vast burning deserts, and ancient trade roads winding between east and west, where civilizations met, clashed, bled into one another, and were reborn across thousands of years. It was here, somewhere in the second millennium before the Common Era, that a collection of nomadic peoples drifted down from the north. They spoke Indo-European languages, distant ancestors of Latin, of Greek, of the very English you are hearing right now. They were not Arabs. They were not Semitic peoples. They were something older. Something altogether different. They called themselves the Aryans. The noble ones. And the land they claimed as their own they named Arianum Vija, the cradle of the Aryan people. Over the centuries that followed, two of these groups rose above all the others. The Medes in the northwest, and the Persians in the south, settling in a fertile stretch of land known as Pars, or Fars. In those early days, the Persians were the lesser power. The Medes held the throne. The Medes built the region's first great empire. And the Persians watched. They waited. They learned. But history has always had a talent for humbling whoever sits at the top. In the 6th century before the Common Era, a child was born who would bend the course of human history. His name was Korosh. The world would come to know him as Cyrus the Great. What Cyrus did was something the ancient world had genuinely never witnessed before. He did not conquer simply to destroy. He conquered to build. When he defeated the Medes, he did not wipe them out, he folded them into something larger. When he marched into Babylon, one of the most formidable cities on the face of the earth, he did not put it to the torch. He walked through its gates peacefully, honored its gods, and declared himself the rightful king chosen by Marduk, the great deity of Babylon. For the Jewish people held in exile in Babylon, Cyrus was not an invader. He was a deliverer. He set them free. He allowed them to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. He remains, to this day, the only non-Jewish figure in the entirety of the Hebrew Bible to be given the title of the Anointed One of God. Under Cyrus, and then under his successor Darius the Great, the Persian Empire grew into the largest empire the world had ever seen, spanning 3 continents, governing upward of 40 million souls, threading roads across thousands of miles of territory, and operating a postal system so swift that it left ancient observers genuinely speechless. This was the world's first true superpower, and at the center of it all stood one name: Persia. But no empire endures forever. In 334 before the Common Era, a young king from Macedonia crossed into Asia at the head of a relatively small but extraordinarily lethal army. His name was Alexander. In a matter of years, through 3 devastating battles at Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela, Alexander tore the Persian Empire apart. The Persian king Darius III fled into the eastern provinces and was eventually murdered by his own men. The mightiest empire the world had known had been brought to its knees. But Alexander did not destroy Persia. In a very real sense, he became it. He dressed in Persian robes. He took Persian wives. He adopted Persian customs and court ceremonies. He declared himself the legitimate heir of the Achaemenid kings. He kept Persian administrators in their posts. He ruled from Persian palaces. He understood something that many conquerors before and after him never did, that you cannot truly rule what you refuse to respect. He died in 323 before the Common Era, just 32 years old, and his empire was divided among his generals. The heart of the Persian lands fell to the Seleucids, Greek rulers who attempted to drape Hellenistic culture over an ancient and deeply rooted civilization. It never fully took hold. Because Persia as an idea, as an identity, as something almost spiritual, refused to be extinguished. Centuries turned. Empires rose and collapsed. The Parthians came. The Sassanids followed. Each reclaimed the Persian inheritance. Each rebuilt what had been shattered. Under the Sassanid dynasty, Persia reached extraordinary heights once again. Zoroastrianism, the ancient faith built around Ahura Mazda and the cosmic struggle between light and darkness, was restored as the faith of the state. Persian art, science, and architecture entered a new golden age. And then, in the 7th century, the world shifted again. Out of the Arabian Peninsula came a movement unlike anything that had come before, driven by a new faith called Islam. Within the span of a few decades, Arab armies dismantled the Sassanid Empire entirely. The last Persian king was hunted down and killed. Fire temples were converted into mosques. Arabic became the language of power and religion. And yet, Persia did not disappear. It did what it had always done. It absorbed its conquerors. It transformed Islam from within. Persian poets wrote in Arabic script, but the voice behind the words was unmistakably Persian. Persian scholars rose to become the greatest scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers of the Islamic Golden Age. Persian administrators quietly ran the machinery of the caliphate. The conquerors had seized the land. Persia, with characteristic patience, shaped their entire civilization from the inside. Centuries later, the Safavid dynasty unified the plateau under Shia Islam, permanently carving out a religious identity that separated this land from the sunny Ottoman world, a distinction that echoes loudly to this day. Within the country itself, the name Iran had long been in common use. But to the outside world, it was still Persia. Then came 1935. Reza Shah Pahlavi, a modernizing and intensely nationalist ruler, sent a formal diplomatic communication to governments around the world. The message was simple and direct: stop referring to our country as Persia. The name going forward would be Iran. His reasoning was grounded in identity. Persia was a Greek derivation, taken from Pars, a single province in a vast and ancient land. Iran was the name the people had always called their own country. It reached back to their deepest roots. It announced to the world that this was a sovereign, modern nation, not a relic of antiquity, not a geographic curiosity, but a living country with its own identity and its own future. This was not the burial of Persia. It was, in a strange way, a homecoming. Then in 1979 a revolution dismantled the monarchy and raised the Islamic Republic in its place. The name Iran remained, but its meaning in the eyes of the world shifted dramatically. Today, when people in the West speak of Persia, they conjure images of ancient glory, of Cyrus and Darius, of vast deserts and immortal soldiers. When they say Iran, they think of geopolitics, of sanctions, of tension. Two names. One land. Two entirely different stories being told about the same place. But here is what you need to carry with you after everything you have just heard. Persia was not erased. It survived the armies of Alexander. It survived the Arab conquest. It survived the Mongol devastation. It outlasted the Turks. It was declared dead so many times that death itself seemed to grow tired of the announcement. Persia did not vanish overnight. It simply changed what it asked the world to call it. If you want us to keep pulling lost empires out of the shadows of history, Make sure you like this video and subscribe to Crimson Archive. We will be here, digging through what the history books buried.